a podcast shedding light on how healing is an inside job. Keys to your inner power and total transformation. Discussing wholeness, wellness, and the effects of the mind on the physical and energetic parts of our being. Sacred knowledge that inspires us to look within, to find our own unique path. Release and rewire to become what you truly are, strong, whole, and empowered.
Welcome to the Empowered Mind, Empowered Health podcast for the Conscious Game Changers with Dr. Jayne. Please like, share, and subscribe. Just be the wave. Today we have Grace Asagra, author of The Healing Dance. Grace has immersed in her family's practice in Indigenous medicine in the Philippines and now blends pre-ancient Indigenous ancestral healing with conventional medicine as a registered nurse. She also does quantum energy science healing to upgrade our DNA to its original blueprint. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Marquis, and you're so sweet to invite me.
Oh, lovely to have you. Grace, let's get into this really juicy topic about returning our DNA to its original blueprint. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Okay, so, how did I come into those words? I guess from early on, I've always heard that we are made in the image of God, and others call them Allah, or are just in the image of someone much higher and greater and force than us, that it's infinite, that it is, that if that infinite being, that we're able to go and connect to that infinity. But then all around me seem to be teaching me that, okay, things are not really infinite, that it's finite. And so it's kind of part of me is getting confused of that. But then it's just interesting that when you have felt it, like I felt it in my heart, that that's not impossible, that the truth is there, but then it's not being being taught to us, and then it said, okay, then things come to me. So for me, that original blueprint is still, that consciousness is still the foundation of our healing, and that physically our DNA really has that ability, but somewhere, somehow down from the history, and this goes back way before the two of us were born. So it's like eons ago, ancient years ago. There's some digress race that made it intentional that at some point we wouldn't have, our DNA is changed. So there seemed to be like an off balance. And, again, I'm not a physicist or specialist in DNA, but those are the things that people can research on their own and then see that, okay, what is it that we tend to be fearful, or we tend to have that negative thought of not advancing ourselves? It's because it seems like we have forgotten that that's our original DNA blueprint is a blueprint of infinite possibilities. And so especially nowadays, and all the things around us, whether it's another group intentionally plotting certain things, but also the way we behave will now affect, because we ourselves would alter that, or will not, we won't be able to reach that potential that we could go back to that original blueprint. It's not easy, and it's not just gonna come overnight. We have to own it, and we have to work on it. And so it's just a continuing process, because I think that's what we, each of us, came here for, to live that human experience. And yet this is just one experience. So it's still, it's a continuing process. And that's why I always say, bring it back to your original blueprint. And, because it is there. And instead of like, but then, yeah, the inheritance of certain things, is a reality. But then the emphasis should have been that, although there is some inheritance of the weak genes, but be outside that weak junk genes is, or not outside, in that junk genes is really a whole potential of infinite possibilities of what we can experience. And it's not that it is a strange topic, because there are other people and who have experienced super power thing, but it's just that it's not in the mainstream, it's not in the news, it's not a highlight that it's happening. But it is happening, and it mostly we hear those conversations in alternative media, like the podcast and other things. I always say, Jayne, that how come the best studies, the one that's awakening, the empowering education, is not really within the mainstream educational system, but it's all outside. So from that time on, I became like a believer. I became like a seeker of real education outside the main education. And as one, as even like Dr. Duhenio, who's a quantum, whose specialty is quantum morphogenetic resonance, and Dr. Butar would always say that truth is stranger than fiction. And then then they follow it up by saying, would you rather live in lies than in truth? But can then both of them, and I bet a number of health professionals, doctors, it's just, again, it's not becoming popular topic, but it slowly it's coming. And I am optimistic that soon that will become like a buzzword, and people will understand what that means.
Yeah. Well, if you watch Thrive 2, there's hope of that, because they go into Nassim Haramein's work, and he's a scientist that has looked into all kinds of things that connects everything, the unified field. And, they talk about how you can connect to that through meditation and the right energy, and that we are far more capable than we believe or have been led to believe. So maybe that's where your education has kept us maybe in a box.
Yeah,
That could be what you're saying, right?
I think so, because I guess there's just some of us who came into this world to have that role, that they can do that one role, and then here we are on another role. So, but I have that Thrive 2 in my list. So
you'll love it.
Yeah, I'm going to take time tonight or tomorrow, but because I have a little bit easier time this week.
Yeah. And you come from a family that was into Indigenous healing, and there must be a connection to all of that.
Yeah. I grew up in the Philippines, and in a region, it's a city, but it's called rural. It's a rural and an urban. So it's not like a big city. And during the years that I was growing up, we didn't have television. We just have radio. And now there is TV. There was no elevator, and there's no such thing as supermarket. But of course, now there's supermarket. So it was really like a very quaint city that's still so close to nature. And we have hospitals. And that's where I originally got trained as a nurse. So even with nursing that I went to, of course, it was based on the science of Western medicine, Western science of education. But they weren't very strict with us when it comes to like us talking with the community about indigenous healing practices. And we didn't have, rarely does family have a health insurance. When most people will just go to the doctor, I guess and not even all when mothers had to deliver babies, but we had a lot of traditional midwives as well. So because of that, became like an first aid. I call it the indigenous healing was our first aid. It was like, it's just a natural thing. But of course, slowly people were going away from that. But what my fun experience was that even when I was working in the community as a community nurse, so now here it's equivalent to public health nursing, I can tell them, if they come to me with fever, they don't, we don't send them to the doctor or anything. We take care of them as a community health nurse. And my rule when I used to take care of them is, how about, did you use this herb? Did you use this? Did you use that? So everything that's from the indigenous healing. So then they said, oh, no. And I asked that because the locals, they know it. Sometimes they just have to hear it. And if they hear it coming from me, like a nurse, I said, oh, maybe it's okay, they should try that. So I tell them that if your fever doesn't go away in 3 days, then come back to me. I'll give you something. And during that time, and again, this was part of, now I can't really compare now, but during that time, big pharma used to give medications free to the community, okay? But I'm sure nothing is really given free, because there's always another system there that's making some money out of that free thing. So we had like supplies, but I will never give those antibiotics, not even Tylenol. I will tell them to take the herbs and do their sponge bath. And they rarely come back to me after 3 days. So, and initially I was teaching, or we have that public education. And one of my favorite books, Jayne, during that time was Where There Is No Doctor. I don't know if you've heard that, but that was a book that was translated into many, many languages around the world. Where There Is No Doctor. So, and that, what I did is, it was really a collection of all indigenous first aid, or the first things you do. So what I did is, whatever common illnesses that my community was experiencing, I translated that into my language, in fact, beyond my language, my dialect. So I had a good time doing that. Okay, because I want the people to really get it in their head that it said, look, it is a book and it's written, and doesn't it sound familiar that this is also what we're doing here. So so I initiate the teaching, but before you know it, Jayne, it was so enjoyable because they're teaching me. And there will be a day that I will tell them, oh, next week we'll talk about herbs for your stomach problems. And they'll bring me plants, we'll talk about it. So it was really a dynamic community. So when I left the Philippines, because I had to help my family, they were really sad. And they, when we had a big community party, but they're happy that I did not forget those teachings. That's the thing. They said I went even more crazy when I came to United States because I talk more about the herbs. But they didn't expect that. But they're so happy that I'm doing what I love to do when I was still in the Philippines.
Yeah, well, the body knows how to heal with the right support. And, even a fever serves a purpose in that it helps burn off the virus. So the body knows what to do with the right things. So what were some of the first aid things you love to give?
Definitely, like with or without the herbs, like sponge bath, right? Sponge bath, steam inhalation, because we have a lot of citrus plants in the Philippines, lemons, grapefruit, different from our grapefruit here. So we have like guavas. And so we use those leaves a lot for colds, for during post-delivery, then you use that for women to wash yourself. So so from the sponge bath, and so whatever we can place there, then the steam inhalation. Then of course we're known for what we call the hilot. Hilot, it's HILOT, and people go to hilot, which could mean also a healer, but also could mean the actual massage. And if you're a healer, they expect you to know about you, that they expect you to guide them or to coach them in terms of your food, in terms of your herb, in terms of when you can take a wash, a sponge bath. So that's very popular. And there we have a lot of what you call arbolario, which is also herbolario. That's a Spanish word. So that connects with the curandera, in Mexico, in Guatemala. So those are all the indigenous healers. That's very connected to the Philippine indigenous healing. And so we have like herbs like, now it's popular here, it's the moringa. And we really eat that also. So it's not just like an herb, but we eat that, we put that in our food. And of course, now some companies put that as part of their supplements. Okay.
Yeah, tell us about that, why it's so good.
Well, because it's in the studies, when I say studies, research, the professional ones that is study, they said it's great for balancing sugar metabolism, okay? And it's also for women who likes to breastfeed. It helps them produce more milk. So those are the two highlights of that. But then it's known as an antioxidant. So that means, again, for people when you say it's oxidation, so it's inflammatory. So it's great for the inflammation. And because it is green, and everyone knows how green is like the super vegetable of all. So it has, again, all those phytonutrients, phenolic compounds, and all that is in there. And now people use it for tea, because now they sell it as powder. And at one point, when I went home after many years, they were putting it in our bread. So I said, oh, this is so interesting. They put it in our bread. But and it's also known that it's also grown not just in the Philippines, because I've seen it when I went to Indonesia. I saw it there, and in Thailand, I saw it there. However, just like other things, other food, sometimes in every country, in every culture, they use it differently. So when we were traveling in Indonesia with my sister and my son, we saw on the way from one town to another city, we saw it on the street, and we asked the driver, can you stop? Can you stop? He said, we want to ask that vegetable. And our driver was so excited because he said, what are you going to use that? I said, we want to cook it because we kind of miss the Filipino food. I guess we love the Thai food, but and the Indonesian food, but at that point, you missing your food. So what we did, they didn't even, it's that kind of tree that you don't have to pay, because almost all neighbors in the Philippines have that tree. So we asked, they gave it to us, and in the bus or in the car, while we were traveling to the city, we were preparing it because you have to take it off from stems. And then we went to a restaurant that and graciously asked, can you cook it? But they don't know how to cook that. So we gave them the recipe and they cooked it for us with fish. And so we made it into a soupy vegetables.
Lovely. Grace, how do you spell it? Just so.
It's Moringa. And I saw it in Costa Rica. I saw it in Cuba that they were kind of selling it, but I know it must be growing also in Costa Rica. But I get so excited. I said, whoa, it seems like because there's always a continuing studies, although, okay, it's not too big of studies of a lot of plants, but people continue to do some research, right? It seems like every year there's a famous of something. Yeah.
So beautiful. That's one beautiful example of how Mother Nature gives us such a gift. Grace, let's go back to sponge baths, because, you know, that sounds like such a mundane, simple thing, and people forget how powerful it is.
Yeah.
I know when I get sick, I'll fill a bathtub with very hot water in order to induce a fever, and often that will help me burn off the virus faster, and sometimes I don't even get sick. But you talked about putting things in the bath. And why a sponge bath? Because, well, our skin is the largest organ, and so it's super powerful. Just tell us about that.
Yeah. So, and this is also, the sponge bath is also a practice common among homes, in the homes, but also it was also popular at the hospital when I was a nurse in the Philippines. Let me think. When I came here in 1985, we still did it, but it wasn't like the first thing that a nurse would even think now. Okay, the first thing when they think that, okay, someone has a fever, they will give Tylenol because there's a standing order for certain temperature, right, Jane? So they give that. And then so slowly it was like we're moving away from it. Yeah, yes, the skin is the largest organ, and you know how, because it has all those pores and the temperature, then it just have that natural rhythm of, if it's cold water, then the pores were closed, and if it's hot water, pores were open. So then if you want to decrease your fever, so opening it will be good. So then it will, the fever will, it slowly go away. So that was, and plus, if we make it in such a way, it doesn't have to be a strong rubbing of the skin. That is kind of also promotes the circulation, which again helps the person detox while they're there. It's not even that we're just helping the fever, because the fever, as we know, is like our first line of defense. We're like helping the body to do its natural course. So in doing that at the hospital, we just I remember we were allowed to put alcohol if there's no sensitivity. Okay, we were allowed to put that, and yep. we enjoyed also, we can put all the ice there. So that in the hospital, we didn't put necessarily some herbs, but at home, all anything that is citrus, that is high in vitamin C, you get no, okay. So then again, it's like you're feeding the skin, you're cleaning the skin, and plus it's a wonderful, let's see, now we go to the psych, beyond physical feeling of your mother, your grandmother is right there taking care of you, telling you stories, talking to you, or some in some families, they sing to you while they're washing you. They're just like, telling you to, it's okay, things will get better. So that attention is so beautiful. Now, I remember that my mother could be very busy, but she will be the first one to take care of us. Then when she gets really busy, then my aunt, because my auntie or my grandmother, because isn't that during those times, and I'm sure it happens also in other cultures, but I can just really speak from the Philippines, that there's always more than 2 generations in one household. And that again is such healing of, and lots of learning being passed on by just oral tradition, which is very indigenous. Everything passed on to you by experience, which again, for me, that's an indigenous science that is by experience. And that's why I guess I resonated to quantum science, because it was like I was getting, although I was learning all of these things in nursing, and I continued to attend seminars, get all my certification for critical care, made me look so good. Then I keep studying with Western, the integrative medicine, I could continue, but not even all integrative medicine seminars teaches you about doing that, or about emphasizing that we are more than physical body, that our behavior is important, that energy, especially behavior, is a key to connecting everything. So yeah, so a lot of citrus. That was one of our favorite herbs there. Then we put now the eucalyptus, and because we have also peppermint, But during the hilot, I was talking to you about the massage. We can use onions. We can use okay, this is a little strong, but that's why if you're really so sick, you don't even care because you don't go out. They just keep massaging you every day. You could smell like they're about to cook you. With garlic, with onions.
Yeah, so they would massage these things into the skin to help heal.
Yeah. And then we have one part of and I'm glad we're talking now, because actually I'm making a series of videos. I'm creating I call it Filipino Hilot Course Gabay. Gabay means guideline. I'm going to do a digital course for all of this. And now while talking, I may add another video. I now have 22 outlines. And so one of the things that we do, and this also similar to the Chinese, is we pull, when you have fever or you have a headache, you massage and you pull your hair a lot. So then if your parents have all those coconut oil or other oil and mix there, and so that's another way that they like release your fever, release your headache, release whatever's in there. And they don't really have to explain everything to us. They didn't have to define things. They didn't have to use a lot of words, which sometimes now I feel like it was an advantage that they didn't use a lot of words, because then my imagination was still, I didn't limit my understanding to just the word.
Yeah. And how far we've, turned a leaf and the other, we've moved so far away from that, when someone's sick, they're barely touched. They're just given, a pill to bring down a fever. And yeah, so interesting to remember and to bring back these beautiful healing modalities.
Yeah. Holistic nursing, the organization which started sometime in late 80s, it was a strong, influential organization that was bringing this back. I know that because when I first came to United States, there's not a lot of talk about self-care, and nurses they're so dedicated to others, but not to themselves. That's why there was a lot of shortage. That's why we came to United States. A lot of foreigner nurses came to United States because it was burning local American nurses, and plus no one wants to be a nurse. So, but because of that, they were bringing it back. However, I don't know about this time. This time it's like basically everything again got cut off. Like, okay, people, you can extend your hand to shake your hand, or just, although someone said that people look at people more even with their mask on. That's not my experience. Even when I look at someone with their mask on and I don't have mask, people don't seem to look at me. So, okay. So, but I'm happy if that's the experience of another person, that they try to look to your eyes. And now we have to do extra effort to smile and let our eyes smile, because we can't see it, our face. And um, our favorite thing to do when the daycare for the dementia and Alzheimer's was still open, and that became really my recent specialty, the first thing that we do is smile, joke at them, hug them. Just we always do that. And that was like a given. That's just one of the many hugs the whole day. Then, of course, to each other too. We had a good team of very loving, touchy people, smiley people, joke. So we always start. That was kind of like the opposite of when my 20 years in critical care, where when you come in, it could be a code right there as I'm entering. So, but of course, during the day, the middle of the day, the nurses who know how to take care of ourselves and our camaraderie, then we know how to make jokes or just have a life, even if we were in the critical care unit.
Yeah. So the way we've cut people off and quarantined, in a way, is harmful to the human ability to heal.
Definitely. So, but then I'm still hopeful that the more we carry a conversation like this, so even on one-on-one, when I make phone calls, Jayne, I always tell them, make yourself happy, because some of them, I have a few that they by themselves. The family didn't even take them for their Thanksgiving, and she's by herself. I said, what is one person for that? But I just tell them, make yourself happy. Find something to do with your hand, create, or just, I said, okay, just don't think too much of when we will open. Just stay day to day. And if you want to talk to someone, let me know, so I will connect them. I've gotten good in doing 3-way. I said, even if they just talk for 1-2 minutes, because they, being with dementia, they may not have a lot to say. They may be repetitive, but I still tell them, do you want to talk to someone? And some of them said, no, because I feel crappy. I said, okay, whenever you feel like it, let me connect you.
Yeah.
So it's just hard. But I'm hopeful, because our original DNA goes beyond this. Okay. So that's why, and as long as we don't fall into the trap of those negative behaviors, that is not part of our original blueprint DNA of super kindness, loving, and believing that, okay, we signed up for this, but then how do we handle it? How do we respond to it? So,
Right.
and it will change. It's the
Yeah. So fear is one of the things that we can fall into. What do you suggest people do to awaken their original blueprint? What are some of your tips?
one of my favorite thing is really making sure that you find a time to be outside, especially like in the morning, because that's like the infrared that is more healing for us, that's healthier, that's, you know, no fear for all those skin sensitive people. So go out there and then, yeah, enjoy the sun, as one of the expressions says, eat the sun. Okay, look at the sun, have a little conversation with the sun, because that goes straight to your pineal gland, plus your skin. Okay, plus it's, and we don't even have to convince you of what it will do to you. You do it and you tell us, because it's the outcome of relaxation, of going to your parasympathetic nervous system to calming it down, is instant. And so let's see, that's accessible, right? Although I know someone made a comment where said, well, how do we do that when we are, this lady comes from the Middle East, and it was really hot. So he said, it was very hot here, Grace. So I said, well, you know when to do it, so don't let me tell you when to do that, what you need to cover. And so, you know, you make your own judgment to do that. So that's one. And then the other one that's easy again, and I like combining things, because if I don't have a lot of time, so with that, being outside, I'm bare feet also. So now you ground yourself again, okay? Because that grounding again goes back to our original organic minerals that we are really made of. Okay, all right. So that's very practical. And what is it that we all do? And in the first aid, what's the first one? That if we don't do it, we're dead. We breathe. So we breathe, but this breathing that like you, Jayne, your favorite is Wim Hof. I like that too. But then for others, there's so many breathing YouTube, from pranayama to all other things. And that was really also, these things that I'm sharing was the very first things that I learned when I came to US. Jayne, my experience when I came to US in the first few months, I say that God did not allow me to fool around. Right away, I got connected with people who were in a group doing what you call know thyself to heal thyself. Then they were mostly common people. When I say common, they weren't health professionals. There was maybe 2 doctors and one who's going to be a doctor, but mostly ordinary people like our listeners. And so because of that, I didn't get a chance to fool around. Again, that's why I said that once your soul, because we are souls, once your soul become aware of what you came here for, all the other things, it helps you to connect the dot. So at that time, we were doing all the fasting already. I was learning already about, that's why I was one of the few who, I made up my form for no vaccination. I made it up, Jayne. I submitted it to the school, and I met Dr. Furman, who is now very famous. And he even said, how did you get away with it? I said, my religious belief. Then I asked him, how did you get away with it? And of course he said, well, I'm a doctor. So he made his own excuse for his kids as well. So it connects, everything connects. So yeah, so I did that right. So you can go out, you can ground yourself. In fact, if the weather is nice, you can lay down there and someone said when I first delivered my son on the first week, we were out on the beach already. I'm exposing him already in our little yard. Before I let him pray around butt naked. And my experience for myself, if I don't get as much sun during spring and summer, I'm not that strong on fall and winter. So I know that now. That's why as soon as the weather is warm, I have to keep making myself be out there, doing my computer, doing my Zoom, just be out there. Okay, so we did that, and the breathing,
Grace, how do you feel about sunscreen?
the sunscreen. Well, I really, it will still cover up. It will still prevent you from getting the best vitamin D source. But again, okay, so maybe others may want a little bit, but they said in the studies that even the least amount, it will still affect. So then I ask myself, so what's then maybe the natural way of protecting your skin? It goes back again to what we eat. They said if you eat, as healthy as you can be, which all of us know that we should eat greens, we should not be eating, sugar, or, they said if you protect yourself from inside, then you could protect yourself from the outside as well. Now, to make it a little bit feeling good, I guess, I like aloe. So I would put aloe, and that's kind of like soothing. And then if one goes out in certain time, then don't go out there in the middle of at the height of the sun. So I mean, use your one should use your judgment, okay?
Yeah, I love your suggestion to go out in the early morning when the infrared is the highest.
Yeah, so that's the best one. Okay.
Yeah, best time. So you were going into breathing when I asked you about sunscreen.
Yeah, but we know about the Wim Hof, right? And that's really very interesting because right, Jayne, and I sometimes I cannot do until the 1.5 minutes of holding it, for before you take another cycle. But it doesn't stop me from doing it again. I just keep doing it, okay? And then the other one that I learned from way before is the alternate breathing, the alternate nostril breathing. And I learned that before meditation. Okay, and then the counting of inhalation should be like the exhalation should always be longer than the inhalation, and then there's always a holding the breath. And then when I was learning this, and all while working also in ICU and working with respiratory therapists or pulmonologists, and then when they are doing some ventilator settings, I see the same principle, okay, based on the arterial blood gases when they examine. So basically, um, that is from an indigenous way that they're doing it. I said, this is the lengthening of the exhalation. So so there is science to it. There is science to it, and the longer the exhalation will always be beneficial when we could practice ourselves in holding it. And the longer exhalation is that the parasympathetic, I guess that's where the word also is long, parasympathetic. That's how I remember it, right? Yeah. Relaxation, parasympathetic.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the longer you can stay in parasympathetic and realize when you're getting outside of that and bring yourself back is so important, because it reduces our stress response, and it's much healthier to stay in the parasympathetic for so many reasons.
Yeah, and I know there's some breathe. Okay, don't I mean, it's not always safe to do it's not safe to do this while you're driving, but there's some breathing that sometimes I like to do when I'm driving. And this one is not about holding my breath, but I'm just doing my abdominal in, like I focus on the exhalation, like, so then it's my belly just keeps on going back out, and they said to focus, don't focus on the inhalation because you will naturally inhale. So I like that, because sometimes it could be boring when you're driving and you might be upset, you know, and then when you're upset while you're driving, you really hold your breath, and that's not good. So then you take a deep breath while you're driving, and
Yeah.
you know, that's when also nice music comes handy when you're driving.
Yeah, you can do your whole routine while driving
Yeah.
to a certain
And
extent. Just don't
yeah.
close your eyes.
And I did that, Jayne, because before the COVID, when it takes me from my place, from my home to my office was maybe like 20 minutes. So, and you know, I wake up early already to prepare my whole routine, which means again, that whole self-care of, you take care of yourself, you wake up early and do your thing. And part of that too is in the driving. You know, sometimes I can do my quiet time for meditation, but sometimes if I didn't get a chance to say some of my mantra or some of my verses, I just do that also in the car. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So using that time
oh yeah.
for self-care. That's a beautiful way of looking at it. So Grace, you've given us such a wealth of and a look into Indigenous medicine. Tell us about, you also have a podcast now. Tell us why you did that and why
So
you're
finally, the time came.
yeah.
And I said, thank you for asking me. Yeah, finally, the time came that I had no excuse but to really do the podcast. I had dreamt of it. I had thought of it 2 years ago. Then, you know, I was just doing kind of like, I bought my own microphone, no camera. Then I said, Dad, let's find this. They said you can use this program. So it's always like a self-study. Then, but I didn't do very good, because when I got into that point, like, oh, I have to commit to publishing a number of this, and you know, for a week, said that's a lot of that's a lot of work. So like, so like, wow, who would want to do that all the time? So so that was part of the things that were you know, saying to me, don't do it yet. And then technology, like, how do I really upload these things in an easy way, you know? So then you see a lot of things, but then it's still in my heart. So I said to myself, okay, maybe it's not time yet. But then when this thing happened, the first feeling that I had when it was announced that it is a pandemic, for some reason, my first feeling, I feel like I was choked. It's like I felt like uh, part of my speech, you know, was already curtailed, or you know. So that, I don't know. And right away, I said, "It this something is not correct with this." I didn't even see any news yet. But my friend just told me, because she's a nurse also. I said, because we were in the show, we had a theater show in New York. It was a big production, and I was part of it with the Filipinos. So I said, Grace, it is World Health Organization declared this pandemic. I said, really? I said, it can't be pandemic. So because of that, then, you know, I kept watching, or my soul was looking for information more. And even if I was no longer working at the hospital, you know, in direct critical care, I knew that what they're talking about, the people who knew or were saying, questioning what happened, I know that that was true. because I've been in the system. So I know how about, when you put the diagnosis, when required of you, all that reimbursement, I was there already too. So, and I just started crying. And then someone asked me, and someone called me and said, so Grace, do you think all these things I said, yeah. And I just started crying because at least someone remembered that I could have an opinion, I could have a voice. Then, of course, I saw that training, okay, that it was actually not me who saw it. It was George who saw it. And then he knew that I had a dream to do a podcast. He said, that there's a class. So when I look into the class, and, I just right away, intuitively, I like to use my energy to feel if it's the right class for me, the right connection. So I did that. And then of course I had to think of a topic that I can talk about the topic forever, that I will not get tired of. And that's kind of difficult to choose, but I said, let me just find a way. So I'm happy that, and that's how I met you, and it expanded my whole world.
And your podcast is called Quantum Nurse.
Nurse.
And what is your topic that you can talk about forever?
Anything that is holistic in nature that will affect health. So that would mean modalities, insights. If they talk about vaccine, or they talk about big pharma, political stuff, decisions, because it will affect health. So anything big, and I know that holistic healing means everything, anything and everything could affect that. So, and I like interviewing people who are experts, and also when I say experts, who may have their degrees and trained in the universities, but I like also experts from their experience, and people who have gone through difficulty and that they used modalities, or they had some practice that they were able to overcome. And that includes also what other people may call paranormal way. I like that, because that's also how the Filipino indigenous healing, we were familiar with what you call, supernatural ways of healing. That even when I went home, let's say 10 years ago, when if my uncle, if we have to cut a piece of banana leaf, because we use banana leaf a lot for cooking, wrapping the fish or something, we will ask permission from the tree, because other beings might be living in that tree. And then so any of this topic, and I just like talking about providing platform, and not just me talking, but in fact, I think I enjoy more connecting people, finding a way for people to speak your truth, speak what you want to speak of, just tie it to health. That's it.
Yeah. And freedom of speech and sharing some truth. It's beautiful what you're doing. So Grace, how do people find you?
Right, I have my old website that is graceasagra.com, but I have also the new one that I've been slowly building, is the quantumnurse.life. And so but of course I have the YouTube, Quantum Nurse Grace Asagra YouTube, and the Quantum Nurse in BitChute. And before, I didn't put my RN, and a very good friend said, no, put your RN there, because sometimes I forget that I have to put my RN there. So I put it there. And then the Apple Podcast, and yeah, like you, Jayne, too, right? It is exciting. You can put in many different platforms.
Yeah, and reach many. Thank so much for sharing your wisdom today. And I will add all those contacts into the write-up so people can find you. And to everyone out there, thank you for listening. And don't forget, don't give away your power to anyone else. Just go be you and be the wave.